Hello, and welcome to this module on curriculum mapping. This module is primarily going to be an overview of curriculum mapping and its context within the curriculum development cycle. Curriculum mapping is really an important part of the outcomes-based education movement, which really has a challenged tradition in course design. Traditionally, courses were designed with the what in mind, with the content that students need to learn. The outcomes-based education movement brought a lens of so what. If the content is the what, so what will students be able to do as a result of knowing that content, of being able to utilize that content? And so the evolution of program learning outcomes, which started really with course-based objectives, and most of us are familiar with by now, the program learning outcomes are really the aggregation of those in of the course objectives in the achievement of the program learning outcomes. And it's also given some thought to how do we assess outcomes, as well as how do we help students develop those outcomes. And so the outcomes-based movement, which really has changed the conversation from the what to the so what, also include the how will we know and how will students know if they've achieved these important outcomes, and what are the activities along the way, what are the experiences along the way that students are going to be able to develop, through which students will be able to develop those particular learning outcomes. And so curriculum mapping is an important but a single point in the curriculum development and assessment cycle. And you might think, what are some of the other points? And so I just want to talk about the triangulation, because mapping holds a particular place. Right now, there's a lot of focus on curriculum mapping because it's been missing from the conversation. But we already have ways for gathering student input, ways for gathering educator feedback, employer feedback, alumni, different metrics we might be interested in, understanding what goes on in programs similar to ours, understanding what future knowledge, skills, and values students will need, and how to embed those into the curriculum today. And so curriculum mapping is a part of that toolkit. And the part that it plays is really provides a program level perspective on the knowledge, skills, and abilities being developed over time through the program, in particular through the curriculum of the program and through the courses in that program. We're aggregating up the individual course experiences to the program level when we're looking at curriculum mapping. What we're looking at is where in the curriculum, what courses contain opportunities for students to develop these skills and abilities and knowledge sets, and how are we assessing them, and in other words, how do students know and how do we know that they've achieved them, and how are we going to help students develop these skills through those courses. And it's really looking at the aggregate of all of that. And so, in my experience as an undergrad in my program, all those dots, which may be considered as courses, were separate. And very rarely were there connections made between courses. I don't even recall one of them. Curriculum mapping is the evolution of that model that says we've created all of these courses. What's the connection between them? What are those program outcomes that we're looking to achieve, and how do the individual courses and pathways through those courses help students develop and demonstrate their abilities at the end of the day? We know that helping students make meaning, not just within a course, but between the courses, integrative learning, is a really important addition to the insight we can offer around our curriculum. Having said that, it's also really important to understand the difference between expectation and reality. When we're mapping curriculum, what we're mapping is what we expect, what we intend, what we hope. We know that sometimes the reality is quite different. I watch baking shows all the time, and then every once in a while I'll try them out myself, and expectation versus reality are two different things. And so I think it's really important to recognize that outcomes mapping is what we intend, not reality. And so it's going to be important for us to triangulate that with other tools in our toolkit, as I showed earlier. So what are curriculum maps? What are we talking about when we're talking about curriculum maps? What we're talking about curriculum maps are really that visual spatial representation of a program. So this is a pretty standard, not atypical visualization of a curriculum map. So let me take you on a walk through this. What we're looking at the top in the black bars is the what. What are those content themes that the educators believe that students need to master before they graduate or for graduation? Directly underneath that is a related program level outcome that articulates exactly what we hope students to be able to do. Where you see in the grid below on the left where it says program requirements, those are the required courses. 6 courses have been mapped. And the numbers in each of the boxes you're looking at are actually the course objectives as they were stated on the course outlines of each of those courses. And so if they had, 7 or 10, they were all numbered, and then they were mapped by the instructors to the program level outcome. And so what we get here is a very quick representation of the expectation and places of opportunity for developing program outcomes for our students developing program level outcomes. And without going too in depth, without knowing too much context, you can immediately begin to see some issues through this visualization that you might want to bring back to the committee or to the faculty or to the instructors. Let me break that down for you. On the second outcome to the left under approaches, if you look down, you'll see there's not one course objective from those that were mapped that actually provides students with an opportunity to develop that in their course. Despite the importance of this as one of 8 program level outcomes identified, none of their required courses offered students the opportunities to be exposed to that outcome. Likewise, when I look at the last column on the right, food systems, and the related outcome, identify and analyze variables that contribute to the complexity of food systems, there seem to be a lot of course objectives. A lot of the courses are focused on this outcome. And that may be appropriate or it might not be. But it certainly seems to me, just on first glance at this curriculum map, that one of the outcomes is being under focused. It has not enough of a focus, the approaches theme, and food systems is getting an incredible amount of focus. Those are 2 observations I would absolutely bring back to the committee, to the curriculum committee, to the instructors, to identify what do we want to do about that. And this is the opportunity where curriculum mapping really provides an insight into what we can do to enhance our curriculum. In a larger sense, curriculum mapping has potential benefits globally. In this era of increasing mobility on a global scale, being able to communicate and demonstrate the value of that degree will encourage more opportunities for mobility without having to restart careers. So in engineering, I've been working with them for about 15 years as they've moved to a more outcomes-based accreditation system here in Canada, where in the past they used inputs like number of hours in a lab and number of courses in math as their indicators of what students are learning. They've now every engineering education unit is now mapping to 11 graduate attributes, identified global competencies. This same activity has gone on in other countries as well. US, EU, Australia, UK, New Zealand have all adopted some version of global competencies for engineering. The idea behind that being one person who gets educated in one particular country is able to now work in a different country even though they're not educated in that country. So we all know lots of people who come over and engineers who work as taxi drivers. Canada wants to be able to, and the world wants to be able to take better advantage of those people's skills and opportunities and potential. But we can only do that with some reassurance of what does an engineering degree mean in ABC country. And so the articulation of competencies within a country that also align with an international set of competencies really opens up opportunities for those engineers to work globally as opposed to just where their degree is recognized. If you play that process through in your mind, you can easily see how one of the negatives of curriculum mapping and aligning outcomes globally is that we may tend to make all of our engineering programs look the same. And that is not the goal of the outcomes-based movement nor of curriculum mapping. There certainly is, in engineering, an increasing agreement on what an engineering degree means at its foundation. But there's also the important addition of what's unique in our institution, in our country, in our engineering program, with our students, with our instructors, in our context. And so clearly, learning outcomes are commonly held throughout engineering programs, but they all look a little different, they all sound a little different, and they're all, or many of them, are offset with additional ones that go beyond the commonalities to what's unique, and those can be mapped as well. Curriculum mapping is not a magical stick. It does not prove your program does anything, but it begins to illuminate insights of what we intend and where those intentions play themselves out in our courses.